Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader and tonight we're going to focus on the meeting that took place yesterday between His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi and his counterpart from Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, in Cairo, discussing a number of important topics politically and economically as well. But we will be starting straight away with the main events and the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi over the past week. In the upcoming report, stay tuned.
President Abdel al-Sisi received Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, who tendered the government's resignation to the President. President al-Sisi tasked Prime Minister Dr. Madbouli with forming a new government with highly qualified, competent and experienced individuals. President Abdel al-Sisi congratulated Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, as the Indian people have reaffirmed their confidence in his leadership for a new term. Confirmed that Egypt is looking forward to work together in the coming years to open up broader prospects to enhance historical relations the two countries and their friendly people share. President Abdel al-Sisi received the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, President Ilham Aliyev. President Abdel al-Sisi and the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan witnessed the ceremony of signing a number of joint agreements. President Abdel al-Sisi holds a joint press conference with the President of Azerbaijan, President Ilham Aliyev.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. As I mentioned in the beginning that tonight we will be focusing on the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi on Saturday and his meeting with the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. We will be having more details regarding such an important meeting in the upcoming report, as President al-Sisi commended the bilateral relations between Egypt and Azerbaijan.
During a press conference with his Azeri counterpart Ilham Aliyev in Cairo on Saturday, President Abdel al-Sisi reiterated Egypt's support for all initiatives aimed at achieving peace and stability in the South Caucasus region and full support for dialogue and negotiation towards a just and comprehensive peace. President al-Sisi also commended the recent progress on the demarcation of borders between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which paved the way for a new phase of development and serves interests of the peoples of the region. For his part, Aliyev affirmed to al-Sisi that the border has been stable over the past 2 years. In April, Azerbaijan and Armenia reached an agreement according to which Armenia shall return 4 villages to Azerbaijan and demarcate the borders in a bid to end decades of territorial disputes and clashes. The Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs commended this important step, calling on the two sides to take further confidence-building steps for a peace deal between both countries. During the press conference, President al-Sisi outlined Egypt's efforts to provide access to humanitarian aid to Gaza Strip and to achieve a ceasefire, calling for prompting peace and coexistence in the region instead of wars, destruction and devastation. He also stressed the importance of establishing an independent Palestinian state on 1967 borders with East Jerusalem at its capital, in accordance with international resolutions. Meanwhile, Aliyev affirmed Azerbaijan's steadfast agreement with Egypt on all international issues, expressing his full support to the Egyptian efforts on Gaza crisis and calling for an end to this war. He further stressed the need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza Strip and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. Meanwhile, the President mentioned that he invited President al-Sisi to participate in COP29 climate conference, which will be held in the capital Baku in November. He also expressed his happiness visiting Egypt, looking forward to strengthening bilateral relations and emphasizing the need to enhance trade between both countries. For his side, President Sisi extended his congratulations to Azerbaijan for hosting and organizing COP29. Furthermore, Egypt's president underscored the importance of maintaining regular political consultations between the two countries. In this regard, President Sisi pointed to the upcoming Egyptian-Azerbaijani Joint Intergovernmental Commission on Economic, Technical and Scientific Cooperation, in addition to the Egyptian-Azerbaijani Businessmen's Forum, which shall contribute to advancing bilateral economic and trade relations. Prior to the press conference, President Sisi and Halim witnessed signing of several memorandum of understanding and agreements between Egypt and Azerbaijan. They included an agreement on youth and sports signed by the respective ministries of the two countries.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. As we did see over the past report, the statements made by His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi and his counterpart from Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, on enhancing the bilateral relations on the political level. As for the upcoming report, we will be focusing on deepening the economic cooperation between Egypt and Azerbaijan, especially in the fields of pharmaceuticals and renewable energy. We'll be having more details regarding these important topics and those important fields in the upcoming report. Stay tuned.
Minister of International Cooperation Rania Al-Mashat met with a high-level Azerbaijani delegation led by Deputy Foreign Minister Faraz Rajiv last May. The delegation, comprising 22 government and private sector officials, aimed to strengthen bilateral relations and explore opportunities for further cooperation. Both countries have expressed keen interest in developing their partnership, exemplified by Egyptian President Abdel al-Sisi's visit to Azerbaijan in January 2023. This visit, the first by an Egyptian president, resulted in the signing of 3 documents covering irrigation, culture and trade. During the meeting, both sides discussed preparations for the 6th session of the Egyptian-Azerbaijani Joint Committee. This follows the successful 5th session held in Baku in 2022, which led to agreements in small and medium enterprises, trade, investment and maritime transport. The Azerbaijani delegation highlighted the positive outcomes of their visit to Egypt, including technical meetings with Egyptian government agencies and private sector companies. Discussions focused on potential collaboration in pharmaceutical manufacturing, food exports, maritime transport, investment, electrical cable manufacturing, aviation, construction, oil and gas, chemical industries, pesticide manufacturing, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, green hydrogen, renewable energy technologies and agricultural. Al-Mashat emphasized efforts made by both countries to finalize agreements in various sectors. The Azerbaijani delegation also shared their preparations for the COP29 climate conference, highlighting regional and international initiatives to combat climate change and support developing nations' transition to green economies. They expressed a keen interest in collaborating with the Federation of Egyptian Industries and the Suez Canal Economic Zone. Al-Mashat discussed the NWFE program, a national platform addressing energy, food and water challenges through regional model and soft financing approach for climate change adaptation, mitigation and resilience. The two sides agreed to share Egyptian expertise in climate financing and the implementation of Sharm el-Sheikh Guidebook for Just Financing, a roadmap designed to help developing countries secure funds for a green transition.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I am honored to be having with me today in the studio for such a special episode is Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, the political analyst and the member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Happy Eid or
Thank
happy
you.
Feast
Same
for
to
the
you.
upcoming week.
Same to you.
Dr. Mohamed, of course, we did see yesterday the meeting between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and his counterpart from Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. How do you see the importance of having enhanced bilateral relations between both nations on the political and the economic levels?
Right. It seems to be a very interesting and very important sort of summit, actually coming in a very crucial time. In the meantime, touching on and upon a large number of very crucial issues, economic, political, strategic, military, as well as cultural levels, so to speak.
Yes.
The fact, you know, I mean, we have got very strong ties with Azerbaijani people. The state as it stands, actually, you know, I mean, reaching to its own independence in 1991 and celebrating that sort of the National Day seems to be quite very much important step in inaugurating bilateral ties between the Egyptian presidency, actually, and the Azerbaijani state on the other hand.
Yes.
You know, I mean, during the course of the last year, that is 2023, His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi did visit Baku, initiating a large number of initiations and touching on a large number of, you know, a memorandum of understanding with the same president, and hailing him and congratulating him for a second tenure, actually, that is Ilham Aliyev. You know, I mean, as a very distinctive and very distinguished sort of popular president, actually, to be reenacted again and to be re-elected for a second time by his own people.
Yes.
And his own importance, you know, I mean, stems out of the fact that, you know, political, geographical necessity, cultural, economic ties, as much as the strategic partnership. Both people and both types of states, that is Egyptian state on the one hand and the Azerbaijani state on the other, have got more than one thing in common with each other. We have got bilateral ties, very much strong, cultural details and beliefs as much as notions of, you know, a large number of mutual interests between ourselves to a greater extent.
Yes.
And from that sort of mutual identification between the Egyptian people on the one hand and the Azerbaijani people on the other, we can really, you know, I mean, push on a presidential level a large number of memorandum of understanding. To begin with, from economic point of view, it seems to be very much beneficial for both parties, for the Egyptian state as much as, you know, for Azerbaijan, insofar as we have got a large number of progressive attempts in field of medication, of important, you know, medicines, and exporting a large number of merchandised items, a large number of commercial items and details of energetic powers, of electrical instruments, a sort of thing that the Azerbaijani side would benefit to a greater extent, particularly the medical you know, I mean, industry, to a greater extent as well, you know, I mean, from the economic point of view, we did sign a large number of memorandum of understanding concerning, you know, I mean, development in fields of tourism, because between Baku and Cairo, on the other hand, there was a very straightforward and direct airline carrying passengers and a large number of tourists, just by way of enhancing the sort of tourism here in Egypt. And in this particular respect, I'd like to draw the attention of all our own viewers that during the course of the last visit of His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, and signing a large number of memorandum of understanding with the Azerbaijani side, a large number of Azerbaijani tourists did come to Sharm el-Sheikh, visit Luxor and Abu Simbel Temple of Aswan, of a large number of, you know, I mean, very much monumental places in Egypt, just by way of enhancing the you know, I mean, the hard currency, as much as enhancing, in the meantime, the tour leaders and the tour, you know, I mean, industry. On and, you know, the cultural level, as I've just said, we have got a large number of mutual identified issues, benefits, interests. In the meantime, we have had affiliation to the same organization of the Islamic unity, both of us, both of the Azerbaijani side as much as the Egyptian state.
Yes.
And in the meantime, from the, the strategic point of view, I think that Azerbaijan is very much important as a state, as it stands, as in itself it really is, insofar as it has got very much interesting and very firm and very much strong ties with the European Union, with the NATO, as much as with the American administration, in much the same way that it holds very strong ties actually with Russia in the meantime. From that point of view, I think that the affiliation of the Egyptian state to the BRICS would add to the greater enhancement of the atmosphere of cooperation and the strategic relation between the Azerbaijani side on the one hand and the Egyptian presidency on the other. One major strategic importance also would stem out from our own direct relationship with the Azerbaijani side is the fact that it holds very strong ties with Israel. And in the meantime, it intermediates to put an end for the division and struggle between the Turkish side as much as the Israeli side in the meantime. And in the meantime, we can really understand the fact that that is Israel would utilize the Azerbaijani territorial lands and spying over the intelligence services actually that do exist in Iran, or the Iranian, secretive intelligence agencies actually. And as such, it seems to be quite very much interested in the Middle East, and the Egyptian territorial land would play the role of being the gate or the big gate to get into Africa, the heart of Africa, as much as to get into the inside of the Mediterranean area. That sort of very much crucial, area playing a very much role in peaceful treatments in the Middle East as much as on a global level.
Yes.
The importance actually of our own direct and very much straightforward relationship with Azerbaijan would stem out from the fact that, we are always there for very much peaceful reasons and means. Egypt has always been known and has been quietly, distinguished in its own both regional and international levels. We never, interfere into the internal affairs of other countries. On the other hand, on the contrary of it, I would really say that the Egyptian presidency would always be there, here, there, and everywhere, just by way of stopping all the struggles and of introducing the peaceful ways and means and those peaceful routes actually to negotiations instead of the military struggling campaigns and the militias tussles and struggles. For example, I still remember, during the course of the last year when His Excellency, Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi did visit Baku in 2023, there was, a turmoil, sort of an exceeding struggle between Armenia on the one hand and Azerbaijan on the other. Both of which are very much struggling with the border lines between both countries for the validity and the, the intimacy of the value of Nagorno-Karabakh. That sort of struggle of which Egypt actually would interfere just from the peaceful point of view, thus gaining at the end of the day the recognition of the international community as a very much peaceful way and means through the which almost, not only regional divisions but actually international tussles would be pacified and would be actually solved to a greater extent. This will acquire the Egyptian presidency a great deal of recognition and acceptance on both local and international level, and much the same way that I really think that Azerbaijan would seem to be quite very much able to get benefit from our own previous experiences during the COP27 that was in Sharm el-Sheikh for about a couple of years ago. A sort of recognition and great deal of consideration on the part of the international relation and the international administrations actually that would recognize the great ability and the powerful ways and means as much as the very much strong diplomatic ties and the powerful negotiative approach on the part of the Egyptian presidency to solve almost all the problems at the time. Particularly the COP29 that will be initiated in Azerbaijan will be, I think, inviting Egypt being one of the most eminent and distinguished states of the BRICS, being affiliated and getting into the BRICS so very much near, I think this great consideration on the international level would be to a greater extent valued and highly, I mean, accepted not only on the Azerbaijani side but almost on the international arena, I would say.
Yes, Doctor, you mentioned that Azerbaijan has solid ties with Israel. How did you see the exchange of presidential visits between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Baku and from President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan to Cairo yesterday? How do you think this is important regarding the times of crisis that we are witnessing in Gaza and the tensions that are growing in the Middle East regarding the genocide war from Israel against the Palestinians, against the Gaza Strip, against Rafah of Palestine, and of course with the Palestinian resistance group of Hamas?
Well, it's a very important issue and very much a strategic point of view, actually, because after more than, 250 days of excessive struggle,
yes,
of genocide, of turmoil, of assassination, of sabotage, of almost demolition in almost every conceivable respect on the part of the Israeli side, it seems to be quite inevitable that the only way to get, a ceasefire is only negotiation and through negotiative approach on the part of almost all the concerned parties, including Egypt, of course, because the American administration, as it was to be precipitated and was to be propagated by Joe Biden, a couple of days ago, is very much vital and a prerequisite, actually, in the Middle East to negotiate and to intermediate and to try to push the negotiations of the, the attempts on the part of the both parties, that the Hamas on the one hand and the Israeli side, despite the sort of the arrogance and the far from being negotiable way that could be accepted on the part of the Israeli side. But I think, the mutual identification and the source of the visits and the great and very much strong ties that Ilham Aliyev, would propagate with the Israeli side, it's very much beneficial in our own negotiation. It's very much important in trying to utilize the chance of the friendliness that does exist between both parties, actually, as one way of the peaceful ways and means and resources through the aid of which the Egyptian presidency actually could be able to negotiate and to try to not only be able actually to, give the humanitarian aids and to transmit the sort of medications to the Gaza Strip and to the Hamas's figures and the Palestinian figures in general, but in the meantime utilizing that sort of very much strong tie in propagating, a very much and widespread international concept of how those Palestinians are not to be blamed, that they are to be victimized to a greater extent, that they have nothing to pay, they have not the ability of saying yes or no, of select or reject the status quo that they have reached to, and utilizing and using and harping on that sort of very much crucial issue, particularly at this particular respect from the sort of the previous visit of our own, distinguished authority of our own presidency, that is Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, during the course of the last year, enhancing it with the yesterday's state visit on the part of Ilham Aliyev. I think it would be of a greater benefit for pushing and discussing and examining and negotiating the peaceful road towards, reaching towards a peaceful solution after the inability on the part of the American administration, after long, extensive days of negotiations, to reach to, a point of agreement, of a consensus of opinion, of which they can really separate both parts from each other. Well, I think the Egyptian presidency, as being represented by His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, is very much interested and very much a strategic part of the visit on the part of Ilham Aliyev, of widespread of representing widely internationally the sort of the victimization of almost all the refugees, of almost all the Palestinians, and of the Hamas figures, of the of the inhabitants of the wasteland of Rafah, the Palestinian one indeed, particularly when a couple of days the refugee campaign was to be demolished and devastated and, swept into a quagmirish existence on the part of the Israeli side.
Massacres.
Yes, it's a sort of massacre death. It's a sort of genocide, I'd really say. Particularly kidnapping and the act of assassinating of I mean, separating heads from bodies on the part of all those, youngsters, particularly the white community at large about 3 days ago would condemn the Israeli side of the genocide and of devastating, of alienating, of isolating those youngsters, actually, to a greater extent, sort of an condemnation that the Israeli side would always reject and deny to no avail. But I really, from my own point of view, widening the sort of the propaganda as much as stabilizing and publicizing so publicly the sort of the atrocities and the scandalous affairs, the genocidal, attempts and the mass massacre deaths on the part of the Israeli side, to be widened and to be internationalized, to be publicly publicized. As such is one way or another actually of enhancing the peaceful road. So much so that you can really say that a one-sided attitude, if persisted on, would inevitably produce its own opposite. That is, I think the peaceful road, I think after this long rocky road of negotiations would inevitably reach to a point of consensus of opinion after underlining and publicizing and representing so widely the sort of the atrocities and the massacres on the part of the Israeli side. So this sort of visit and that sort of state visit, I would really say, is very much important in solving, even indirectly, you understand, the sort of the tussle and the struggle that does exist on both parties. And in this respect, I would really, enhance and underline the fact that is being propagated in the part of our own presidential authority of trying to solve it in a very intelligent way, very resourceful manners, I would say, things that couldn't be obtained in military campaign and militias attacks and all these military powers. A sort of a very peaceful road to be initiated in the part of our own presidential authority, I would really say.
Yes, Doctor, you've mentioned another important point, and another important topic is that Azerbaijan will be hosting the COP29 this year. Egypt hosted the COP27 a couple of years ago in Sharm el-Sheikh in November.
Yeah.
How do you think the experience could be shared from the Egyptian side to the Azerbaijani side regarding hosting a very important conference on the global level, and more specifically to be cooperating in the fields of climate change and green energy or renewable energy?
Well, after long years of alienation and of an absolute sense of isolation on the part of the presidential authority before his own advent, before the coming of Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, his own first tenure, and the second one indeed, I would really say that Egypt was very much isolated and would almost accepting the stoic acceptance of long years of alienation from the African states, from the African Union, to the extent of being expelled from the African Union to a large number of years.
Yes.
Alienating our own, bilateral relations with a large number of African countries and states, to the extent that Egypt at one time was very much, quagmirish existence at the heart and the throat of the African continent. But by his own advent, that is his own first and second tenure, Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, almost the whole map of the road was wholly changed to a great extent. More than 330-degree turn, I'd really say. For one thing, we have had in 2019 the sort of the chairmanship of the African Union. We have had a very helping hand for almost a large number of the African countries, and during the dilemma and the COVID-19, we had always been there. Aiding and helping and stretching hand of assistance. Not only to the African states, but almost to the international level, to China, to America, to a large number of European states, to a greater extent, a sort of a role of which the Egyptian presidency was exemplary, striking a very good example of loving kindness and of friendliness, of peaceful initiation on the part of an African country that had been derelict, that had been isolated for quite a long period of time from the heart of Africa. Now then, by his own advent again, we did start and assume our own prestigious role of our own very powerful existence, our own negotiative, state to a greater extent, to the extent of reaching to the great deal of success as being propagated and represented on the words and on the tongue of Joe Biden when he did visit Egypt a couple of years ago, propagating the sort of achievements and the prodigious help of which the Egyptian side would play during the role of, minimizing to a greater extent the sort of the expels and the emissions and the very much bad vapors, and the attempt on the part of the Egyptian presidency to try to alternate it with the green hydrogen, with
Yes.
the oxygenated tools through the air, which almost the creatures, including the animals as much as the humans, could really breathe very much clean sort of oxygen. And in the meantime of trying to alternate the sea life in the meantime and save almost the sea creatures from certain devastating ending point through the pollutions and through the effusion of almost all these toxic chemical subjects and objects into the seas and oceans, of which Egypt was playing a very much distinctive role, particularly in one of the most distinctive summits in Paris, of which Egypt was leading existence. All of these experiences of trying to emulate from and to change all these traditional, fossil fuels into clean energy, into very much purified sort of green hydrogen and oxygenated subjects and objects that would alternate actually the human life to a better existence, is very much a straightforward and exemplary sort of success and distinctive type of very much a progress that had been achieved on the part of the Egyptian presidency. And I think that Azerbaijani side, during the course of the previous summit with His Excellency Mr. President Fattah Sisi,
Yes.
Mr. Lamelev, did represent the sort of the great benefit of which the Azerbaijani side would benefit from the Egyptian side, and in the meantime inducing and inviting Egypt as a sort of a cornerstone, as one of the major countries within the Middle East, of its own vast ability of cleansing and of cleaning the beaches and of the seas, of the shores and of almost all the lakes, of the project attempt on the part of the Egyptian side to be able to be part of the international agenda, to be part of what you might call the international community, not very much deviated from the international interests on the part of, purifying and cleansing almost all the external atmosphere and the vast emissions that were to be, coming from, chemicals and instruments, of which the African side has nothing to play, was not very much claiming being so. It's blameless, and one also of the major opinions that His Excellency Mr. President Fattah Sisi was almost representing, that almost all the African countries, would never ever actually be able to pay their own debts unless there should be in somehow or another one attempt on the part of the European countries to try to make them, pay tributes and minimizing the sort of the taxes, as much as helping finding what you might call alternative substitutes for the masked unemployment and finding alternative jobs for almost all the people in these African countries.
Yes, Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, the political analyst and the member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate, and the Happy Eid.
Thank you. Same to you.
And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.